Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. I started this podcast after watching this t-shirt. Is not a proclamation. It's actually the company of a man named Eddie Penny. He's a former Navy SEAL. He was interviewed on the Shawn Ryan Show. And I said, as I sat down and watched an episode in the spring of 23, I did not realize that the entire trajectory of my life would change. Eddie sat down and was recounting the story of the Extortion 17 incident in which Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan, killing all 38 souls aboard, including 17 SEALs. It was their biggest loss of community in one event. And one of the dead SEALs was Jason Workman, Eddie's best friend. Eddie was recounting the story of escorting Jason's body back home to his hometown, and as he did, he was frankly crying, rightly so. And as I was watching Eddie speak, I simultaneously began thinking of a call that I had 5 years before of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. I had buried that call deeply. I was a 30-year retired police officer, and I began crying like a baby. I now realize that it was because Eddie was an absolute warrior. Subconsciously told me it was okay to cry. And as I did, I realized that the feelings that I had been experiencing for about the last year and a half, 2 years after retiring were some sort of PTSD. I was fine throughout my career, but once I retired, began thinking about a lot of things. Idle hands at the devil's workshop, and realized I had some sort of PTSD, realized I was not going to live with that for my whole life. I was not going to be this bitter man who hated everything and everyone, knew I needed help. My modality of healing came in the way of psychedelics. My life was changed forever this past March 1st of 2024. And as I came out of my first journey, the universe and I were speaking to each other. The universe told me that my mission in life was to help other vets and first responders heal theirs. And I accepted. In that vein, I started this podcast to do for others what was done for me by Shawn Ryan. And I bring on guests, mostly veterans and first responders who have gone through it themselves. And in bringing these women and men on, I would just want to show you guys that they are ordinary people who have done extraordinary things with their lives. They are you are us. If they healed, you could do the same exact thing. I want to see you looking at them and realize that's me, and realize they got help. You guys could do the same. So let me introduce my next guest. I am pumped with you guys hear these accents. As you can hear, I'm from New York. Jay's from Boston. Jay Bailey grew up on Boston's South Shore. He served in the U.S. Military Police Corps for 6 years and in the fire department for 18. Like many vets and first responders, Jay began to struggle with psychological or stress-induced injuries and was diagnosed with PTSD. As Jay began to recover and reclaim his life, he also became a passionate advocate for first responder mental health. At first, there was no plan, just a desire to be there for others who were suffering in the same way that others have been there for him during his own time of need. Today, Jay is the co-director of Hope Beyond the Badge, an organization dedicated to making it easier for first responders and their family members to seek help. Serves on the Plymouth County Critical Incident Stress Team, holds degrees in Human Services and Psychology, and is currently pursuing his master's degree in social work. Jay is a proud father to his 2 children, Reese and Jackson, and I am honored to have Jay on the podcast. Brother, great having you on. Welcome.
Oh, I'm honored to be here, brother. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. In just reading your bio, it's amazing because I can substitute your name for my name for most of the guests that I've had on this show. It's so funny, brother, because we all think that we're all alone, when in fact, it's almost comical. And I don't mean that in a funny sense. I mean it in an ironic sense, that we all go through essentially the same stuff. And we think that everyone else has it figured out. First of all, I promise you guys you're not alone. Second of all, as Jay and I know, no one has got this shit figured out. So, brother, tell me if I'm wrong on those 2 counts.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Good. So, you guys who are going through it, promise you are not alone, and I promise you no one's got it figured out. So, Jay, again, great to have you on. We were introduced by a mutual friend named Kenny Mitchell. I love Kenny. For those of you who don't know, Kenny was a former fire lieutenant himself. Kenny's gone through it. He started an organization called, Operation Yellow Tape. Sorry, Ken, had a brain fart there for a second. Ken's doing fantastic work, and I'm so glad that he introduced us. So, brother, please tell everyone about yourself, where you're born and raised, how your home life was as a kid, just what kind of made you you.
All right, so I was born and raised in a town by the name of Braintree, which is on Boston's South Shore. My childhood, I would say, was good. I come from a good family. I had good people around me, right? That's sort of the essence of how I feel about it. If I were to lay it out on paper, it might look a little bit different, right? Growing up, I had a lot of trouble with the law, right? I was a kid with I'd probably say more energy than direction. So I think I first, when I was put on probation, maybe around 13 years old, and I never got off it. Like every time I got close to getting off probation, something else would happen, and I'd be.
What'd you do at 13 to get on your first probation?
I think it was an arrest for Class D for marijuana. I think was my very first arrest, but there was so many of them, and I'm so fortunate, that I never did go to DYS or anything like that, and I made it to my senior year where I began. I certainly had not matured, but in some ways, I was beginning to recognize some things that were important to understanding who I was and who I wanted to be. Right.
All right.
At one point, I was expelled from school, and then I was offered the opportunity to come back and go to what they call an alternative high school program. It's a behavioral-based program, and the faculty there were very special people, and no doubt angels in my life. And one of the things that I was able to recognize clearly was that these men and one woman, what they had was strength of character. And a lot of some of the knuckleheads I looked up to, what they were confused kids too, right? But maybe a few years older than me. And what I was seeing was trauma play out in real time. And I certainly didn't have all that figured out, but I knew that I was seeing some real strength in a way that I wanted to bring into my life. And I was seeing some phony tough guy stuff in some other people. And also, my probation officer, he was a Marine Corps veteran. He was proud of that. And, I may have just been another kid in the system to him, but he had a profound impact on my life, right? Like a few times he pulled me aside and he said, I know you're getting into a lot of trouble, but I see a lot of kids. You don't need to go through this path. You're a good kid, dude. And he encouraged me towards the military. He said, I think everything you need is right there. And I think it would be a really good decision for you to consider a future in the military. And I heard him. I don't know if I would have done it, but I did hear him. And then I got, my final arrest my senior year in high school. And at that point, I had a 2-year suspended sentence. So it was like, I remember going back into that probation department. It was like, oh no, this is it. You're done. You're going to jail. You had a suspended sentence, and then you were arrested, and that's what happens next. So they were no longer offering the deals of like go in the military or, it wasn't like that. But I tried to create my own deal, right? I went down, I signed up, and I just went in there like, look, I want to change my life, and I mean it. And this is my offering of proof. I've committed to an enlistment in the Army, and at the time, looking at the background of my life, it was comical that it was military police. I couldn't believe they were letting me be an MP.
It is ironic, isn't it, Ralph?
Yeah, it was. And somehow, with all the chaos of my youth, I secretly, I was like, I think I want to be a cop, and I wasn't saying that out loud yet, but inside, I was thinking about it, and I went into the military determined to change who I was, who I didn't want to become. Right, I still had goodness inside me. I wasn't a bad kid. I was wild, man.
Let me ask you, brother.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how is through these years? How is your dad handling this issue of you getting into trouble over and over?
So my father imparted a lot of wisdom on me that I wasn't ready to hear. Right, so.
Okay.
My father saw what was going on, and he was calm but strong, right? Like he would say things very clearly to me, and a lot of it, I wouldn't say it went in one ear and out the other, because as life unfolded, and I was ready to hear that advice, it was there for me to hear, right? I'd be maybe 21, 22, and come to understand something that was said to me when I was 15 or 16, that at the time, it was all a big joke to me. As I eventually learned a little bit about the brain and, how it's not fully developed, I was just like, that makes total sense with, what I was getting myself into at the time. Again, good kid, but I was wild, man.
Yeah. You know what's amazing is that you're looking back now and you see, you know the entirety of your life and how it played out, but if you and I are talking, say we were talking to a kid in your shoes at 15 years old right now, and he was telling us what was going on in his life, you and I could actually give him the blueprint of how it was going to turn out if he didn't straighten that shit up. And at 15, if someone's telling us that, we're shaking our head like, yeah, okay, bro. Like, yeah, all right. You think you're immortal, number one. You think you're untouchable. But, you and I could actually predict after what we've been through, tell almost to a T, like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And you want to tell these kids and shake them, man, like, you don't get do-overs. You're going to hit a certain age, whatever it's 21, 22, man. Now you're in a big house. Now you have that felony record. Now you're no longer employable in so many different fields. So your options get more limited and limited and limited. Every choice you make that's a bad one limits you and limits you and limits you further and further. It's amazing.
So true.
But it was good that you had the awareness to see this, even though you're getting into trouble, at least, it seems like you just had too much energy and you didn't have anywhere to direct that.
Yeah, and I did have, I had people around me that were, to a degree, laying out those blueprints, and as much of it as I could take seriously, I did, and I'm fortunate for that and for those people, because it came to a point where there was no question, right? When I finally got arrested, I was looking at what was going on. I had already been considering the military. It was like, I don't want to become the person that, the general narrative around me was, this kid's going to die or end up in jail. That's what's going to happen unless he makes a big change. And at its core, that message was true. If I continued on that path, and I changed it. And, for those people that believe in God, thank God, right? Like, I was allowed to do that. I was allowed to enter the military, and I took it very seriously to hold up my end of the bargain, which didn't just mean fulfilling my commitment. It meant becoming the person that I felt like I was on the inside, but my behavior didn't represent that.
So at what age do you go into the military now, 17?
So I enlisted at 17.
Okay.
I left for basic after my 18th birthday.
Okay.
A month after my 18th birthday.
Go to Georgia?
No, I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama.
With that accent in Alabama.
Oh,
I figured that'd be illegal to have a Yankee down there, man, back then. Bro, how funny it was when you got down there, because I know you heard that word over and over. We got us a goddamn Yankee.
Oh, man. And I didn't even realize, like, my life, I wouldn't call it sheltered, but, like, I don't know, man. I didn't get out of the neighborhood that much, right? So I didn't realize that the accent was so pronounced until I got there. And I'd gotten into a fight the day before I left. So I show up, I'm like determined to go there and be under the radar. I arrive with this accent and a black eye. And it's like, Beetle Bailey, Jay Bailey, Beetle Bailey, and all this other stuff. I'm like, oh man, so much for flying under the radar. But
exactly.
I was glad to be there, and I loved it, and it was everything that I needed. I really thrived in that environment. And that's, the military's where I became a man.
Yeah, sounds like it. So you literally flipped that switch. That's awesome for you and your life. So you did, how long was that now? You did 4 years?
Six.
Or
I did 6
Six?
years. Yeah. Yep.
And any good stories or anything you like to talk about that happened in the military?
Yeah, I mean, I had a common military experience for the years I was in. Right, I was in from '98 to '04. Initially, enlisted for 5 years. So Kosovo was just starting. Like we heard about it in AIT, and my first duty station was Germany, which was amazing. I loved it in Germany. And right when I got there, it was like, we're deploying. Get ready. So we were the Bravo rotation of the occupying force over in Kosovo. That was in '99. I went back for a second deployment to Kosovo a few years later, which was really cool to see. Like, they had embraced their own sense of democracy. Like, they really changed. When we first got there, the Serbs and the Albanians, you know, it was a peacekeeping mission, right? But it was an interesting thing because they were so at war with each other. And we were active there. We were in riots. Like, there was a lot going on over there for what that mission was. And then to go back a few years later and see them hosting their own elections and like really committing to change. That was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, and then I extended, 9/11 happened, and I think everybody in a uniform at that time, most of them, it was like, we wanted to be there. We wanted to go. So,
yeah, I can imagine how you felt then. Can I ask you how the day of 9/11, how that went for you? I ask everyone how who was in the military, how that went for them.
So interestingly enough, we were prepping for like a long-term field exercise, right? It was like going to be a couple-month field training exercise, I believe, at least a month, right? But we were prepping for that, and it was lunchtime. We went over to the shopette, and during it, because it was going to be Oconus, it was going to be a training mission that took place in like rural Poland, if memory serves. So part of the briefing, as part of each time I went to Kosovo or any time we really went out of the country, we heard about this guy Osama bin Laden, which I'd never heard of on the news, right? But it was like, this guy is, he funds terrorism, and he needs a dialysis machine, and if anybody approaches you to bring one outside of the country, and all this, whatever, right? But this is part of any "you're leaving the country" brief that I ever had.
Yeah, just give it the intel brief, okay?
Yeah, and it was lunchtime, and we went over to, we were like, I think I was buying like a Discman. Remember Discmans? I was going to bring that with me. And on the wall of TVs in the on base in the electronics department, it was it flashed on the news. The first tower had been hit, and we watched the second tower get hit, and we questioned.
So you guys are all like, we're at war.
We were like that. I bet that was that dude. They keep telling us about that Osama bin Laden. Who else could fund this? So that was sort of the dialogue. And I ended up extending my service. I went over to 10th Mountain Division, went to Afghanistan with them 03, 04, and then I came home.
And when you were over in Afghanistan, did you get into any engagements over there?
So there's a certain like threshold of engagement. There was always gunfire in the distance and all that, but I was never like a lot of presence patrols, a lot of stuff like that, a lot of right afterwards, right? But I was never pinned down in the type of firefights that I know a lot of other people have been. No, I did not have that experience.
Okay, good. I mean, were you wishing that you were at that point? I know you're a young man and piss and vinegar, but
I was
now I'm sure you're probably like, I'm glad I didn't. I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, how do you feel about it?
I just feel okay with my experience. Like, I was expecting it. I didn't expect to leave Afghanistan without a gunfight. They were very common, right? And you'd see both, the locals and our members and friendly nations being, brought back. There was like mortars came in the wire. Like there was some hairy stuff.
Right.
So I expected it, right? I wasn't like hoping for it. It was like, it's definitely going to happen, but when's it going to happen? And then it just didn't.
Yeah.
And I left there just proud to have served, man. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is '04. You're finishing up, and do you know what your next step in life is going to be?
Yeah. So
At this point?
I want to be a cop or a firefighter. The things I knew, like when I got in the Army, it was the first time I had ever been like the smart kid in class, right? Like everything that held me back throughout my youth, it was like, go tackle that, shoot that, run, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm doing well. And I'm like, this is incredible. So I was really getting a lot of positive reinforcement. Yeah. Like I was rapidly promoted. I was fortunate to have good mentors around me. I admired them. I tried to emulate that myself as I came into leadership positions. I loved being a part of a team. And I was going to come home and become a cop or a firefighter. That was it. So I took all the civil service tests. I came home, took every test I could, and I got the cards from the fire department and the police the same week. I sent back the police department, whatever packet they had requested. Fire department called me in for an interview and called me that day and said,
wow,
are you prepared to attend the Boston Fire Academy next week? I was a Weymouth firefighter, but it was part of the Boston Academy. But and I said absolutely. And in that moment, it felt like everything had aligned. Like you do work as a member of a team in the fire service, and so that was like, I was like, this is the right fit. This is how it's supposed to go, and I loved the job. Like from the first day at the academy, to the last day I worked, I loved the job. I love the culture. That doesn't mean I, never had a bad day or a bad moment.
No. Yeah.
I certainly did. As a
course.
matter of fact, the most difficult times of my life were during that time period. But I love the fabric of the culture. I love being of service. I love being around like-minded people, that when there is something going on and somebody needs to go restore order where there's chaos and leave people with a sense of being okay again, I want to be part of that. And it was a privilege to have the opportunity to do that. I fell right into it. It went well.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wish that every man could experience what we experience in terms of the camaraderie and brotherhood. I mean, you experienced it in two entities, both serving in the military and as a firefighter, but every man should experience being next to brothers, I guess, and sisters that will kill or die for you.
Yeah.
And without hesitation, because you find that nowhere else. And it's a bond that cannot be broken. It's a bond that can't be manufactured. It just organically happens. But when you go through these life or death situations, man, and you're done, you just look over at that cat next to you, and you know in your mind, man, if the shit hit the fan, that guy had your back, regardless of what happened or what the outcome will be. Yeah. It's a beautiful feeling, man. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, cannot be duplicated.
No.
So, were you guys paramedics as well?
No. I mean, we certainly had, people that were paramedics, but it wasn't a requirement. No. We outsourced our ambulances. We responded to medicals with them. Then the ambulance would transport. A lot of our guys, it was like their second job, would be working on the ambulance, but I wasn't a paramedic, no.
Gotcha. So let me ask you now, you're a fireman. Obviously, you're going to tragic, heartbreaking calls throughout your career. Yeah. How are you dealing with these things as they pop up? Did you have a process, or were you just like, on to the next, bury, on to the next? Yeah.
So I never, I was somebody that suppressed their emotions unwittingly. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, right? But no, there was never a thought about, there was, you go to certain types of calls, and afterwards, man, that was a bummer, but I was always proud of the role that I played in it, and for the most part, that's what I walked away from calls from, and that's how I felt about my military service as well. That being said, I never acknowledged those, the sort of essence of what was really going on around me. Now, I don't know how that would have played out long term, but I do believe that if you suppress emotions long enough, eventually they show up in your attitudes and your behaviors and your relationships. And when they pop and when they finally really come up, then it's denial and projection, and it just makes a real mess out of human beings, and it can turn you into somebody that you don't want to be. And for sure, all of that happened to me. But what happened to me was life became slowly difficult, and so I didn't realize. Right? It was like it just inched and crept up on me.
Yeah.
So I changed.
Incremental changes.
Yeah, brother. So my changes in thoughts and behaviors and attitude, and also I had gotten through most of life on more grit than anything else. Like anything that I couldn't do, I just put my head down and I just keep going until somehow we get through it, and I'll try to learn from it. And I try, I took being good at the job as important, but I didn't recognize that there ought to be strategies and tactics to deal with the regular interaction with traumatic circumstances. There just should be. We know enough about trauma and the human condition that we know there's going to be an impact. So when life became difficult for me, I had, and I think this is common to first responders, right? Like what's common to everybody is trauma in the world, right? That's common to everybody. What might be a distinction in the world of first responders is we have a Rolodex of these traumatic incidences, and for me, things that had never bothered me just began scrolling through my mind, and I could not stop thinking about them. And that was very confusing for me in the beginning because they weren't bothering me yet. It was just like I was noticing, why am I thinking about stuff that happened 20 years ago? Why am I thinking about, just really morbid, I've seen people die a lot of different ways, right? And they're all coming up to the surface. And then I started having nightmares, and that's when it got my attention. At first, it was like every so often, and then it was like every night, brother. And I'd never been as afraid of anything as I was of going to sleep during that period of time. And I couldn't reach out for help. I could not bring myself to do it. At that point, I knew I was in a tremendous amount of mental, psychological, and emotional pain. I was isolating everywhere. Even if I was, anybody that's had the experience will know what I'm saying. Like, I could be in a room full of 1,000 people and I was alone. And I never felt like that before. This was all so new to me. If I had anxiety, I had it buried down so deep I had never experienced it, and now I was wearing it like a fur coat, man, and I had no tools to deal with it because I never had. So
no one gives us any.
Yeah.
No one tells us anything. I referenced that call before regarding Eddie Penny about the 2-year-old found floating in a pool, and that was through a 30-year police career, and I worked in Atlanta, my first 10 and change, the most violent city in America. 4 out of 10 years I was there. To tell you the amount of death and destruction I saw, the scale on that scale was just astronomical. I had never cried before on a call until I started that day with that little girl. I started to cry because we resuscitated her. She was dead. We got there. We resuscitated her, handed her off to the paramedics, and I had to stay at that house for 3 hours.
Oh, brother.
With her grandparents while detectives and crime scene came out because they thought it was going to be a fatal. And they had to, investigate for any possible criminal negligence or anything. I had to listen to those grandparents for 3 hours, brother. Most visceral screams and cries I've ever heard in my life. I never in my life felt like I was crawling out of my skin, ever, until that day, and it's never happened since. And because they thought they were responsible for her being in the pool, and they were not, but they were blaming themselves for the death of their grandchild. And started crying, started going behind that pool, and I'm like, you fucking pussy, you can't cry. Stopped myself instantaneously, when in fact would have been the best thing I could have ever done. I had never struggled during my career with anything, man. It just buried, compartmentalized, whatever you want to call it, on to the next. Until after retirement, I started thinking about things, and they started popping up. like you're talking about, and all of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out the origination of these feelings of anger and rage and depression, and I couldn't. I'm pretty self-aware, and I knew I wasn't myself, wasn't happy, but I couldn't figure out what it was until I had seen that Shawn Ryan episode. But man, no one teaches us or taught us back then what to do, and it could be as simple and really one of the most effective ways is just talking about it. But we didn't, man. Like, I could give you the anatomy of a call, and you tell me if I'm wrong. You get to a tragic scene, someone's going to make a fucking morbid joke about it. For the most part, you guys are silent for the rest of the call. You get back to the firehouse or the precinct or wherever you are, and then no one says a word. Because anything you talk about, you're like, no, man, why am I going to bring up sports after what we just saw? You know, it's idiotic. You know, when we saw eclipses, anything I could talk about, so I'm not going to say anything. And he's still kind of trying to process it, but no one knows how. Right. So there's fucking absolute silence. No one says anything, man. It's the weirdest thing. But, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what you experienced?
No, you're absolutely right. And like that gallows humor is very, very present. The only thing that I think first responders can't joke about is the death of a child, right? And
never.
One of my bad calls is very, very similar to that. And I just, I remember the woman standing nose up against the wall, just not responding to us, the mother. And it just real profound impact on me, the way that she was. I have, vivid memories of every moment of that scene. It was snowing out, and then we finally getting her to walk to the ambulance, and she's walking through the snow barefoot, and we're like, oh my God, grab shoes and stuff. But just, the pain was palpable. It was in the air, right? There was it was resonating, and everybody left that scene differently. But you never forget those calls, and I think those are that was one of my bad ones too. Was a kid. It just feels different, man.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I don't know if you were the same, but I was talking to a guy named Jimmy Watts. He's a former SEAL. He's on my podcast, and he and I were very similar in the fact that we would hear PTSD. And when we were young, it was mostly guys from Vietnam, but they were called shell-shocked when they came out of that war, PTSD. But then it became PTSD, and I and he were talking about it, and we were always under the mistaken impression if you suffered from it, you were weak. Yeah. And as I gone through my career, I realized that, no, these guys aren't weak. But I also always had a misconception that PTSD was only suffered if you saw your brother or sister next to you get killed. I didn't realize, and mine occurred from being inside the most devastatingly intimate moments of other people's lives. Like you're looking, watching their life change before your eyes, for the worse. And you're seeing them absorbing this pain, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And after 30 years, man, I can't even imagine how many scenes I was like that. Yeah. That's what took the toll on me, personally.
Yeah. Well said, man. And it was, when you talk about, like, being aware of these behavior changes and not being able to figure it out, as we talked about before, like that was very much my experience. And then when I would Google, I'd like look for help online a little bit because I wasn't able to say to another human being that I was struggling. Everything that I saw, they were these extreme examples. That, and now I just feel like I don't measure up. So where do I belong? And I just didn't have a good enough understanding, like that this is going on in my life, and then this is why, right? I'd look up and find a story of somebody that was, in Tower 2, and they got this incredible story of, bravery and saving all these people, and I'm like, well, I didn't do that. So what's wrong with me, right?
Yeah,
what's wrong with me?
And there's comparison of trauma.
Yeah. And I felt weak, and they say comparison's the thief of joy, but it's a thief of a lot of other things too. And in that case, it was the thief of me being able to be authentic with myself about what was going on with me. But I began during that time period because I couldn't ask for help. I felt like a phony saying, I'm in this kind of pain, because I didn't think that I should be. But I knew I wasn't me any longer. Whoever I wasn't me. I said to somebody when I finally could speak, I said, you don't understand. I lost my soul, right? And like I puked those words out. Like I felt so alone. I felt like I was in pain that nobody had ever experienced before. I now know that many have. But yeah, brother, I started drinking myself to sleep, like every trap that you can fall into at an intersection where I could have reached out for help. I just didn't, and there's a lot of reasons that people don't, and that's the biggest reason that I found myself in this space is like I want it to be easier for people to reach out for help. I want to be there. In line with what you said at the opening of this podcast, like I want to be there for other people the way that other people were there for me, because I was drowning, man. I needed somebody to show me what healthy masculinity was. I didn't know. I knew what it was like, to be gritty. I knew what it was like to be full of shit in some ways, with myself mostly, right? To project strength. I didn't know what it was like to get honest with me, about the things that were uncomfortable. I remember my first time crying too, right? It was like, I haven't cried since I was 7. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Other than the death of my dogs, bro. There was no way you would get me to, I couldn't cry. I literally... One of my really good friends committed suicide in 2005, and I was so sad.
I'm sorry.
And I wasn't crying, thank you very much. I couldn't cry. I remember I get out of the shower and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like trying to make myself cry. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Are you broken? Like literally, I'm like, you're fucking broken, bro. Jack just killed himself. You can't even cry. Like, what's wrong with you, man?
Yeah.
We just callous up to not be able to absorb all this pain or to deflect all this pain that we see, and then we end up feeling nothing, and that's not a way to live life.
No, it's not, and that's what I had been feeling for a long time, and for the most part hiding it at work, and then I got help. I actually brought somebody else for help, and while we were there, one of the clinicians, on-site academy place, was talk about angels, man, in my life, but I brought somebody else for help. And while I was there, before I left, they're like, "Hey, you got a minute? How are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh my God, they can tell I'm exposed." And I don't know how, like, what made me do it, but I said, "No, I'm not okay." Right?
Good for you.
At that point, it had been a few.
That takes strength, by the way.
Oh, bro. And you know what? It felt like it. I felt unburdened immediately. Like I wasn't okay immediately. But it was this deep secret that, like, I thought I had been hiding. And for the most part, I had been. Eventually, it would become clear to everybody. But at that point, at least at work, I was still performing well. And, eventually, I'd begin to struggle there as well. But at that point in time, I was still performing well there. But I said yes to help. And prior to that, I'd gone back to school. Like, with the nightmares and everything, I couldn't deny. No longer was it like I'm just going through something, and it'll be okay because it always has been okay. So why would this be different? Eventually, I'll snap out of it. Once everything got to a certain point where it was like, all right, I don't remember the last time I was okay. I'm not having less nightmares. I'm having more, and I went back to college. Like I went and I started taking. I think we might have talked about this, but I started taking psychology classes, and I had the bright idea that what I'll do is I'll learn enough about what's going on with me to heal me, and I'd never have to admit to another human being that I had any problems at all, and then I could do what I like. I like being of service, so then I'll help other people. And what really
Isn't that
happened,
amazing? Instead of raising your hand and ask for help, bro, you're going to get a degree. Like, think about the insanity that guys kill themselves rather than ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with us?
I couldn't.
You know what I mean?
Well.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I couldn't do it. And I, all the stuff, like some people don't like the word stigma, but I don't know what else to call it, right? Like stigma, there's a recipe that makes stigma, and it comes from a lot of different places. Part of it for me, the part that I have control over, is I was ignorant in a lot of ways, right? And I was Mr. Suck it up and drive on. So it's very difficult when that's sort of the song that you're singing to now, nobody was more surprised than me when I started struggling. So, So what really happened when I got in the classroom is they began, talking about trauma and PTSD, and I couldn't avoid it. Right? I had some powerful moments of self-understanding in that classroom as they were explaining these are things that happen, and then this is sort of the symptomology, and this is how people's lives get destroyed as a result of it. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's what's going on with me.
Yeah.
You know, so by the time somebody said to me, do you need some help? I had a healthy awareness that I did, but I lacked the intestinal fortitude to reach out for myself in that moment. So it was a miracle, man.
No, you enrolled at the school prior to whoever you spoke to asking you if you were okay?
Yeah,
you are, okay.
I'd been going for a couple of years. At that point, I was a full-blown alcoholic, drinking myself to sleep every night because it worked, right? Like I never had the most healthy relationship with alcohol anyway, but once I began using it to sleep, it just escalated to a whole new level. So I was a daily drinker, drank myself to sleep every night because it worked. And
Are you married at this point?
I was married, yeah. I was married,
Okay.
2 kids. And I knew I needed to get sober, but there was such a utility to that. Like if I removed it, I would really fall apart. Like I literally couldn't sleep anymore without it. And I was terrified of the nighttime. Like I'd never been afraid of anything. So it was complicated, and I didn't know what to approach first or how to. So I just, was telling myself, and rightly so in some ways, I'm going to keep learning as much as I can about this, and then I'm going to figure out how to get better. And then I was asked, do you need help? And I jumped into it with both feet.
Good.
Worked on the trauma for a couple of years, just debriefing one thing after another, basically the things that were showing up in my dreams. And then I ended up volunteering up there, and I sat down with my
Up
group.
there is at school?
No, I started volunteering at On-Site Academy, the place that helped me. So I began volunteering up there as a peer. I'm now on staff as the Director of Veteran Services, but this all started over 10 years ago. So I began volunteering up there, but I was still so unwell, right? It was like the infancy stages of emotionally, I'm 12 years old. Right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Riddled with trauma and just learning how to do any kind of processing other than, fuck it and just keep going. And, so it was like a whole learning process for me.
Absolutely. It's like another language that we were never taught. Literally.
Oh, bro. It's exactly what it is. And I had to learn how to sit with my own shit. I had to learn to be honest with myself. And as things began to come to the surface, I began to learn how to make sense of them, how to understand and how to make decisions from that position of understanding what was troubling with me, how to let go of things. I had to practice that. The same way I learned anything, right? The same way I learned any strategy or tactic, I had to learn how to let go of negative self-talk. I had to learn how to let go of things that I had no control over. I had to learn how to choose the thoughts and choose my, states of emotional being. I had to learn how to do that. And eventually it became a really rewarding process. But what was also happening along the way is I'm a fire lieutenant, right? And we go on these calls and we come back, and now I'm seeing what's going on around me, what always had been, but I hadn't seen it before. So I'm come back from this call, and it's like, this one's using gallows humor, this one's isolating, this one's slamming doors, this one's, and I'm like, oh my God, we're all, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, right? It's like there's such a common theme. And some people, we're all at different places in our paths, and nobody totally understands everything, but people were having these moments right in front of me, and there were people that I cared about, and that I felt a responsibility to, right? I believe in when you feel a sense of duty, acting on it. And I knew how to have that type of strength, right? But
Right.
it was coming in a different way now. Now I got to be vulnerable and talk about my stuff. But I knew that's what I had to do, and I did. I said to everybody, like, listen, I don't know if any of you know I've been drinking myself to sleep, but I sure have. And I don't know, and some of them probably did, some of them probably didn't. And I don't know if you know some of the other ways I've been living, some of the shit that I've been going through, but this is what I've been experiencing. This is how difficult my life became, and in what ways it became difficult. And if you're living like that, you don't have to, I promise. There's good people out there, and there is a science and math to trauma and the human condition, and the culturally competent resources absolutely, positively, can restore you, to a level of wellness that maybe you've never had before, but at a minimum, to just being okay.
Yeah.
And people started reaching out to me.
The vulnerability part has been, to me, the most beautiful thing in my journey, because I was never able to. I mean, I was so closed emotionally just growing up with a verbally abusive dad. It started then, and it was perfect for these careers that we're in, but until it's not.
Yeah.
And the medicine has allowed me to become vulnerable, because for a man to let himself become vulnerable and talk about his deepest intimate feelings, or just not even that, just be able to talk about feelings, period, is so surprising to other men, number one, but it allows other guys to open up, and they realize that, holy shit, I don't know, it's like a key to unlock everyone else's door.
Yeah.
Because once they see you get vulnerable, they're going to allow themselves to be vulnerable. And, to me, it's no more beautiful of a thing that we could do to, our coworkers, our brothers, whatever you want to use as verbiage there.
Yeah.
It just allows them to open up, because they see it. It's what Eddie Penny did to me. He's crying. I didn't realize at the time, but subconsciously, I'm seeing this fucking warrior do it, and I'm like, subconsciously, if he could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
And that opened up the floodgates and really changed the trajectory of my life, just seeing that man become vulnerable.
Yeah.
So the same thing with you, with your coworkers, man. I guarantee you changed their lives just doing that.
Yeah, well, some of them reached out to me. A lot of people did over time, but I won't try to re-say what you said, because you said it so well, and that's where I see the magic, right? In that peer relationship, because when I started going up to on-site in these debriefings, now prior to that, I'd made appointments at the VA and stuff, and I'd walk out before I was even talking to anybody. And they have great programs over there. I just finished a year clinical internship at the VA. I can't say enough about them. But it doesn't matter if I'm not open to it, right?
Yeah.
And when I went up to on-site, I was sitting around with men and women that I respected, with like-minded folks. And they were a little further along in their journey than I was, right? So it's that same exchange where somebody who I respect is showing me something new. And isn't that how I always learned everything that I had ever learned? And so there I was, and I knew it was important to be able to bring that back to my firehouse, and so I did. Now, the part I wasn't saying was I was still drinking myself to sleep. I felt like a phony, because I knew I had hope again, right? I knew eventually I'm going to be okay, but I wasn't. So there was kind of this ethical dilemma of, do I guide other people to resources or not? And I think I made the right decision, but eventually decided to just step away from the job entirely. I had all my undergrad stuff done. I knew I wanted to devote my life to helping other people. This was the most meaningful exchange I'd ever been a part of, on both sides of it, on the receiving end and on the guiding other people to help part. And I was like, this is it. I've never been more sure of anything. Many people are going to call me irresponsible, and I understand why logically, but I know I'm being guided. I'm being guided in this direction, right? So my undergrad stuff was done. I got my bachelor's in psychology in order to go to grad school and be a father, right? Greatest privilege and honor in my life is being a dad. I love being a dad. And if we had a whole nother hour, I could talk just about that and how it relates to this conversation. and how I wasn't able to be a present father in my children's lives. Now I was there for everything, but I wasn't here, bro. Right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
couldn't,
yeah.
and people feel that, and like whatever their experience was, mine was hollow. So to be able to be present in their lives again, and like just be a dad, man, to these two amazing kids and the relationship I have with them, I would not, had I not been gifted the opportunity, to heal, dude,
Right.
and to grow. So, I guess I lost where I was. I got sidetracked by my kids.
So you're leaving the FD
Oh yeah,
after getting your going into your master's program.
yeah. So I did that, and sort of along that same time, I developed a friendship with Linda Kokoros. She's the co-founder of Hope Beyond the Badge.
Okay.
So she owns an Irish cafe here that is like a, it's a first responder. I don't know if you want to call it a hangout, but like it's any time of day you come here, there's 5 cops, and there could be a fire truck and a couple ambulances.
Yep.
And that was, I don't think, ever the plan for her. She was just opening an Irish cafe, but their family lost a son, a father, brother, Sergeant Alex Kokoros, to suicide. And I won't tell her story. That's hers to tell. But she was passionate about first responder mental health and wellness, and I was too, and I was still in a lot of pain. And we began sort of a broad dialogue about what could be done. And I knew people from like other departments, and there were so many barriers to people being able to get help. It wasn't just
Right.
I can't say it. There were people who were going to have serious negative impacts in their careers if they reached out for help and it was known about. Like, that's a real thing, and it still
Yep.
is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's other departments where the culture's beginning to change. There's other departments that are really progressive, but that was this. We're having like a broad conversation about the whole thing, and I was, and eventually told her, I was also sort of seeing if she was a trustworthy person along the course of many, many months. And one day I opened up to her. I said, hey, I'm not doing okay. And she just smiled at me and she goes, yeah, dude, I know.
Really?
I was like, oh man, am I the last one to know?
Yeah, exactly. Always.
Yeah, because I had, at that point, I'm sending other people for help, and I feel like this phony. So that was like a great moment for me, and she was an incredible...
Did you say what she's seeing from you to come to that conclusion?
Well, you know what? She is a gifted person. She has a gift. So I'm sure she wasn't the only one that saw it, but she has an intuition. She has a high degree of empathy, and a natural ability to see people for who they are and for what they have going on, which in my opinion in this line of work makes somebody a special person. And I probably sensed a lot of that, and had come to recognize her as someone that was capable and somebody that I could trust to say that to, and say, whatever I'm doing so far, I got to do a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And sort of began that discussion with somebody else, and I went and I got sober, and I turned in my papers to the retirement office, and enrolled in grad school, and like I could see my path. And one day she came to me. She had been asked to do a radio show because we were both becoming vocal advocates, right? And
Okay.
And one of her staff here at the cafe said, "What about a podcast?" And she asked me to co-host. And I didn't even take a breath. I just said, "I'm in," right? Like, and I couldn't. There was no question I was going to do it. I knew it needed to be done, but still. Right, but still talking publicly about real shit, dude. It's the hottest thing I ever did.
Oh yeah, trust me. Who you telling, bro?
I know.
You know? I when I started myself, man, I have a mindset coach. His name is Taylor Kavanaugh. He's a former SEAL himself, and he's been very open about all his struggles. He lost his trident due to his own sabotage. joined a French Foreign Legion for 5 years, and he openly talks about everything he was doing. And I was talking to him, getting ready to launch this, and I'm like, bro, I mean, I have to be the most genuine version of myself, or else I'm just a poser. I'm no good to these guys and girls. And I've been to rehab. I went to rehab in 2012 for opioid addiction, and it's funny because I've never done another drug in my life but smoked weed in high school. I've been fervent anti-drug my whole life, but I found that these painkillers I've been getting prescribed for years and used as prescribed was dulling the pain of it was a shitty marriage. Actually really kind of started me. That's not so much a job, and I noticed that like the pain was going away. My family and she didn't get along. I was trying to make everyone happy. Everyone was miserable, and so I just started taking more and more, realizing, thinking everything was, all the pain was getting dulled by all this stuff, which it was, but you don't realize the damage you're doing to yourself until I was taking like 50 a day, and had like 8 seizures over 3 years, and I'm like, bro, I have to talk about this, but man, how the fuck am I going to talk about this? Everyone's going to know, and that was it. First time. It was super difficult. Second time, a little bit easier. It just got easier and easier, and I've forgiven myself. And now I can talk about it openly. But yeah, you're telling things, your most personal secrets for the world to know. And people hear that, but they don't really give it too much credence. But really think about that for a second. Telling the world your most deepest, intimate secrets, your biggest screw ups. Just think about that, guys. And telling everyone about that, man. It's powerful stuff, but the fact that you're willing to do that to help others in their journey is very powerful.
Yeah, likewise, brother. Yeah, it is, and that's what I needed. I needed to hear it from someone, right? It's that same thing that we just talked about, where we were able to recognize that masculine vulnerability, right? Like there was that.
Someone's watching us right now and identifying with it, bro.
Well, that's the hope, right? And that's how we initially started the podcast, was authentically, if we can just help one person, right? If one person, when they search for it, they can get help sooner than I did, or a family can avoid being a cluster of siblings, parents, spouses, children, but all suicide loss survivors, of a first responder or a military veteran. Those numbers are through the roof. I firmly believe that they are at an epidemic proportion, similar to overdoses in the opioid community. I just, nobody tracks them, and some people, like, I know there's a few organizations that have begun to track them, but very recently we were having a conversation, we looked up the statistics. It was actually for a paper that I was writing in school, and I clicked on Massachusetts by one of these organizations that track it. We looked at the numbers and went, hold on. And we started adding up the first responder suicides here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that we had firsthand knowledge of, and there was 70% underreported. And there doesn't have to be, I find no fault in that. I commend the organization for collecting the data that they do. But for a whole bunch of reasons, we're just not there yet. So the problem isn't fully realized, and so the resources aren't entirely advocated for, even though here locally we have tremendous resources, but still getting the culture to seek them out in the way that we would for a physical injury, that there's a lot of work left to be done to get to that point, I think, and that's the work that I hope we're doing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I'm wearing this bracelet, it says 22, but I think it's more like 44, if not more, per day, which is double. And if this was occurring, this is almost like a mass shooting on a daily basis. And it's not like the alarm bells are getting triggered everywhere, man. People should be up in arms that men and women who are willing to give their lives in service to this country are killing themselves at an alarming rate, and people aren't asking, what can I do?
Right.
It's incredible to me.
Yeah.
These are your brothers, these are your sisters, your daughters. They're going here for this noble reason of protecting us, whether it's a veteran or a first responder, and, working in this field that is bigger than them for these noble purposes, and it's taken its toll to where they're killing themselves and where, it's not this mass effort from every area in America trying to figure out a solution to this. It's slow moving, unfortunately, at a glacial process sometimes.
Yeah. That's right.
So let me ask. So what are you doing now in terms of organization? What? How are you affecting change? Because obviously you are. You got your masters. Do you have your own practice now, or how is that kind of working itself out?
So I'm still pursuing my master's. I have 1 year left of school.
Okay.
So still in that process. We do the podcast. I learn more on my podcast every week. We have somebody in, and by listening to their experience, I learn a little bit more. And I try to grab little nuggets of information to be like, ooh, that'll help me better understand the next person, that I'm trying to help, or better understand, the whole sort of broad spectrum of how we're impacted, because human beings are complicated. So we do the podcast, and sort of along the way, we kept hearing about families, right? And Linda, her experience is of a family member, and we're also looking at the resources that were available, and rightly so. She was like, I want to do something for families, right? Where do the family members go? Because the family suffers together, right? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
No matter what, and if it's easier to see when there's a physical injury, right? If somebody gets physically injured, there's certain things around the house they're not going to be able to do. Other people are going to pick up the slack. It's sort of more nuanced when somebody begins to struggle mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, and then resentments build up, and it can be confusing. Right, so one of the things we did is we started a first responder family support group, and Linda facilitates that along with another family member, and it's really been incredible. And through that, sometimes the family members will be the first ones to reach out, right? And they're like, "This is what's up." And then they get a little bit of education. That's one of the pillars of the support group is education. It's important they understand. That was a transformational moment for me. The first time I got just a little understanding about what was going on in my brain, in my central nervous system, in a way that made sense. I was like, okay, I get that. That's for sure what's going on with me. And now maybe we can do something about it. So to bring to those family members an understanding of their loved one, right? You love someone that's in this profession, and this is what's going on with them, and these might be symptoms, because it's not an excuse to act like an asshole, but sometimes it's a reason, right? And if you understand that that's what's going on with somebody, and you can come to them, so it's not uncommon for me to get a phone call and somebody be like, "Hey, my wife's been going to this support group, and it turns out I might have a little hitch in my giddy up," and they said maybe you can. So I refer them to helpful resources, right? Up at On-Site, we have a program that we run up there for military veterans that are also first responders. And when I come across a veteran as a first responder, or any first responders, that's where I guide them. They have a grasp on trauma and the human condition and our culture in a way that I've just never seen anywhere else, and they have tremendous results. They have over a 90% return to duty rate.
Wow.
So when people go there, they get well, or if they commit to that process. It's certainly more likely than not. So I have such a high degree of admiration for everyone up there, and it's an honor and a privilege, to be working up there myself. So very proud to be up there. We have under the Hope umbrella, we try to make it easier for first responders to get help. They reach out to us, we guide them to helpful resources. We hold monthly blanket nights where we make blankets. Volunteers from the community come together and we make blankets, and then we send them off to these treatment facilities. So when somebody enters treatment, to On-Site and the LEADER program over at McLean, where they also do incredible work, they receive a blanket with a card in there that talks about where the blankets originated
nice.
from, and the idea behind them. And it's a symbol of connection with these organizations, with the first responders, and a very meaningful symbol of connection. We hosted a documentary, PTSD 911, where we held we had over 500 people show up to it. We were overwhelmed with the support. We had a panel discuss, the contents of the documentary and of trauma and first response. People got help right there that night, right? That was like their first step was, I can go watch a movie, right? And then when they got a real idea and we got clinicians in the room, they're going, hey, I need help. Beautiful. Come right over here. Family members come and understand more about it. We got a 5K this Sunday that we're hosting. So we're very, very active in sort of spreading the word and trying to make more first responders and family members aware of the impact that this job can have, on the tremendous culture of men and women that go out and serve their communities with honor and distinction, at risk to their own safety, sometimes physical, sometimes psychologically, and to make sure they know that there are resources available. And when they reach out, we connect them to those resources, man.
That's fantastic. I'll tell you one thing. I think one way that we make egregious error in judgment is that we don't think that our family members can understand what we're going through. So as a result, we don't want to bring it home sometimes, and we just totally shut them out. And I think that that's the worst thing you could do, because like you were just saying, sometimes you act like an asshole and they have no idea why. So I think you have to put it in context for them, at least so they understand what you're going through. I was talking to someone recently, and I think I think this is a great way of dealing with things. Prior to the shit hitting the fan, you sit down with your spouse and you tell them, some days I'm going to come home after a really bad day and I just don't want to talk. So, I think a great system to have in place is you come home and maybe that you figure out whatever your time period is, 30 minutes. That 30 minutes is for me. Just let me unwind, let me kind of do my own thing, be alone. Don't hit me with everything that, you need to speak to the kids. Just everyone kind of let me be for a half hour. Yeah. After that, Dad's back. But if I have a really shitty day, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you today was not good. Now, that night is mine. I can do with it what I want. And I'm not talking about getting plastered drunk, but, essentially if you want to be alone, you be alone. You guys figure out how you want to handle that. But by the time you go back to work the next day, you and she or whoever, your spouse, whatever it is, the relationship is, have to sit down and talk about what you went through. Now, you don't have to give them a play-by-play, tell them everything that happened, just a general overview of, for instance, my thing. Baby, I had a call of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. It just, fucked me up, to be honest with you. I'm kind of trying to process it, and it was like one of the saddest things I've ever seen. I cried at the scene. I don't want to go too into depth about, the whole thing, but so now she understands where she's coming from. She has context as to why Dad's not feeling good. You can't just shut them out, man. It does not work. Right. I understand you want to keep them away from it. You don't have to give them all the, the details, just broad strokes about things that you're going through. But I'll tell you one thing, man. If you just shut them out, then that's what's going to continue to happen. And they're going to see Dad as this lunatic who loses his temper. He's short, he's doing this, he's doing that. And they have absolutely no context within to put your behavior. They just think you're nuts. Yeah. But if they were to see and hear about things you're going through, man, now it makes perfect sense as to Dad, why Dad or Mom is doing this, or feeling this way. I don't know. How do you feel kind of about that approach?
Yeah, I think it's well said, and I think it's vital, right? Like, I don't know if you read Dr. Gilmartin's book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, but he gets into the exact dynamic that you're talking about. He calls it the sine wave, and like sometimes when we come home, we're going to be in a place where we just can't communicate. It's just not going to happen. We gotta. We're at a threshold, and we got to shut down for a little bit. And that doesn't necessarily even have to be a traumatic experience, right? It can just be the nature of of the job over time. But
Yeah.
I sometimes use the analogy, like if somebody's physically injured, right, and you're like, I'm carrying bundles in to the house, and somebody's, I got an able-bodied person standing there, looking down their nose at me, I'm going to feel a certain type of way, like, grab a fucking bag, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And now if I got somebody who's standing there in a cast on their leg, it's like, not only am I going to carry the bundles, but what else do you need me to do for you, right?
Exactly.
So just by opening up to our family members and saying, allowing them to understand us, because if through that miscommunication, that lack in communication, where all they're seeing is the behavioral responses, the symptomology, it's more likely to be interpreted, like, for reasons that make sense, as this person doesn't love me anymore. What's going on in my relationship? Dad's angry. Dad hates me. Whatever you end up feeling, right? It's a less logical leap. Without that understanding, without any communication at all, it's less logical to get to the truth of mom or dad they're suffering. They might need help. They're struggling. Something happened today. That truth, I think takes quite a leap. And just by bridging that gap of communication and figuring out whatever the system is. I love how you put it. Like, you don't have to dump trauma on them or debrief with them, but develop some kind of a communication system where they can know, hey, look, sometimes this job is gonna put me in a zip code where I'm emotionally unavailable, and I'm gonna let you know these couple of things, and then we're gonna do a knuckle bump, and I need a little bit of time. That's a great way. But whatever the communication system is, it does have to exist, because if it doesn't, then our loved ones are left to assume, and there's one truth and a million other things. So, like, just the numbers, just statistically, you're less likely to land on the truth and more likely to arrive at resentments.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And if you guys look at it another way, like, your wife married Jay, my wife married Mike, this Jay. Now, they're getting maybe another Jay because you're evolving, you're changing in these ways, but they don't know it. So it's not fair to them to get this version of you with no reason why. It's essentially what you just said.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it in a different manner. Like, how would you feel about it if it was happening to you? Think about it. Your spouse comes home and she's just tearing shit apart. Giving you lip, giving you attitude. And like, what did I do? You have no idea the origination of this stuff. Well, here's a perfectly great reason why she's doing this, but you don't know it unless she expresses it to you.
Right. Yeah.
So, we definitely have to do a better job, I think, of letting them in. We don't want to tell them everything because you just don't want to introduce all that stuff into your lives. But, again, broad strokes, just kind of paint a little bit of the picture, and I guarantee they will be understanding and supportive and empathetic towards us.
Yeah. And by working with the families, that's another way of getting sort of, those strategies and tactics to psychological resiliency, right? It's another way of getting that information to the first responder, because, they might not show up at a support group, but if their spouse, significant other, whoever does, and then comes back to them and brings up the idea. So anything we can do to help in any increment, right? Like, most of us didn't start suffering overnight. It was incremental. Any way that we can provide relief will probably also be incremental. I know I healed incrementally.
Me too. It's constant.
Yeah.
It's not like you're healed magically, man. It's just ebbs and flows. It's not linear. Life throws traumatic shit at you, so you're never going to be totally healed. You know what I mean? But
amen, brother. And every now and again, I have something new come up, and I guess it's just when I'm ready to see it, and I'm like, all right, but at least now, I got my way of dealing.
You have a whole toolbox now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Every time you learn something new, it's a new tool in that toolbox. So, great thing to have.
Yeah.
So, all right, brother. It's been fantastic speaking to you. All the bios will be or links in the bio, but please just tell everyone again if they want to get in touch with you or get involved with your organizations, how to do so.
Hope Beyond the Badge, where on Facebook and Instagram is Hope Beyond the Badge. On every podcast platform, Hope Beyond the Badge. If you're local to the area, New England, and you're a first responder or family member that needs help, feel free to reach out to j.hopebeyondthebadge@gmail.com or linda.hopebeyondthebadge at gmail.com. We also have a couple of what we call hope lines. You can call us at 781-269-2777 or 617-657-9108. And if you reach out and you need it, we will guide you to helpful resources. And Mike, I just want to say thank you for all the good work that you're doing, brother, and for having me on this podcast. I appreciate it. It's a privilege.
Absolutely, brother. Honor and privilege having you, and hopefully we just change one person's life, and to me that's the most powerful work that we could possibly do, brother. So just serving in a different capacity, both of us.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Guys,
I hope you liked it. I thought it was fantastic talk. If you do, hit like and subscribe, and we will see you soon. Jay, thank you once again, brother.
Thank you, Mike.